Welcome to a short introduction to flight level workshops. You may be wondering why I'm talking about workshops again, because you already learned a lot about workshops for designing flight level 2 or flight level 3 systems. So why bothering with workshops again? Well, the short answer is that we need more formats in order to gain and maintain momentum. Once again, the technical focus of system design workshops is not enough to engage people and foster a culture of continuous improvement. That's the short answer to the question what flight level workshops are about. They're about social interactions that are focused on building trust. Trust in subject matter as well as in leadership experts, and trust in their ability to successfully co-creating the improvement initiative. Last but not least, it is also about building trust in your capabilities as a flight level professional. Of course, there are many ways to do so, and not all interactions that help to improve our way of working have to be bundled to workshop formats. However, there are 4 formats besides single and multi-system design workshops that have proven very helpful in various flight levels initiatives. In a nutshell, the so-called improvement flow workshop that is devoted to building your core team and co-creating enough guidance to succeed with your initiative. Second, the flight levels introduction to involve a broad variety of stakeholders and test flight levels, often with many people at once, that is, with a large group event. Third, the sounding board, where you want to get feedback on draft system designs or flight level system architectures. Finally, the so-called system improvement workshop that gives flight level professionals a special opportunity to provide feedback on running systems and share some fresh ideas. What all these workshops have in common is the big why. In short, they all help to engage people, to foster agile interactions, to provide information and know-how, to get and give feedback, and to co-create improvement. Besides, they also share a certain flow. You always start with clarifying the strategic purpose of the workshop. What do you want to achieve in your specific context? Why this format and why now? Once you have clarified what you want to achieve and how this addresses your North Star, you can start to set the boundaries. Whom do you want to involve? What do you need for your workshop in terms of time, space, stationery, food or drinks? If boundaries are set, you start to prepare the script. What exactly do you want to do? Which activities do you have in mind? How long does each activity take? What is needed in terms of roles, assignments, rooms, or material? And how do all these activities help you to achieve the expected outcome of the workshop? Usually, the design of a tailored script calls for intense collaboration and alignment with sponsors and key players. It needs the same culture of alignment. And it works best when it follows the same iterative approach driven by regular feedback loops as the whole initiative. However, there's always one point in time where you stop preparing and start facilitating the workshop. Since you never fly alone, facilitating is far more than just implementing your script. Rather, it means to continuously inspect what is going on, share your observations, ask for feedback and adapt what is needed. Finally, you should take enough time to debrief your experience. Which of the expected outcomes did you actually achieve? How did you feel, both in being on stage and in aligning with others? What did you learn about the people, about the organization, about the culture of improvement? Last but not least, about yourself. All this may sound like a truism. However, I learned it the hard way how easy it is to screw up by ignoring this flow, by paying too little attention to its stages, or by devoting too little time to mindfully prepare or debrief, let alone to stand there when things feel like getting out of your hands. However, after this rather general introduction, it feels like high time to dive a little deeper and see what each of the formats have to offer. Let's start with the improvement flow workshops. So let's start with the big why. I see 5 goals. First, as mentioned at the beginning, you want to build your core team, that is, develop the group of people responsible for designing and facilitating the whole initiative. Depending on the situation, context, and improvement goals at hand, this group might consist of a cross-functional mixture of experts from different areas of the organization. It could also be that it's just 2 or 3 people with a similar mindset, keen to drive things forward. Whomsoever belongs to this core group, it always helps to reiterate the what, why, who, and how of your initiative at the very beginning. What does the minimal viable North Star look like? Who are the sponsors, key players, and most important stakeholders? How do you want to approach the given challenges? Likewise, you want to foster know-how. What are your ideas for ensuring improvement? What has proven helpful so far? What does that mean for leadership and decision making? Since people shouldn't get lost in theoretical discussions, you need to encourage a hands-on learning by doing mentality that is best practiced by co-creating a draft improvement flow for your initiative. As to the boundaries of an improvement flow workshop, I can recommend a time frame of 4 to 8 hours, depending on the number of participants. If your core group has just a few members, half a day should be enough. If it's bigger, you need rather a full day. I'd always recommend not to fly alone, but you definitely need a second facilitator or flight level professional if a group is bigger than the magical number 7 plus or minus 2. The size of your group also defines the venue, setup, and stationery you need. Preparation-wise, I always use 4 building blocks. Number 1, some kind of check-in that sets the boundaries and gives everyone the chance to get on stage. Depending on the group size, I often start with dialogues. Sometimes I even use short interview guidelines before people share what they've learned about each other. A second building block is devoted to building know-how, for example, with a short input about the core activities of social design and by sharing some real-life examples of improvement flows. The input acts as a catalyst for an open Q&A and encourages takeaways on different levels. Since learning by doing is a main theme, the input also fuels the co-creation of draft improvement flows that get presented and are subject to open feedback and refinement. The fourth element is about transfer in terms of general agreements, for instance, about how to organize ourselves and about next steps. Whereas the improvement flow workshop is focused on getting the initiative on track by building a core group, the flight levels intro workshop is about spreading. Its main purpose is to involve various stakeholders of organizational improvement, which often leads to large groups events. Rather than engaging your key players just for implementing a predefined solution, you invite them to start with the current situation. Without offering them an appropriate opportunity to share their points of view on strengths, problems, and levers for improvement, it's hard to get them attached. Besides, jointly diagnosing what is going on and where to head, the flight level intro workshop also wants to build know-how about flight levels and business agility. Asking for feedback on how the model resonates with them and how they think that helps them to address their most important challenges is essential for achieving the ultimate goal of this format. Namely, to build momentum for your initiative by creating some kind of pool to learn more and practically apply what flight level have to offer. In terms of boundaries, we often work with a large group setup as mentioned before. Especially for flight level 2 initiatives, it pays off to involve rather more than less stakeholders. In many organizations, that quickly adds up to a number of 80, 100, or even more people. Likewise, we need more facilitators and/or assistants to deal with the large group dynamics you can expect. You also need an appropriate venue with breakout rooms if you run the workshop in person. Even if you facilitate an online meeting, you need enough time to introduce, explore, and transfer the basics of flight level. Depending on the actual number of participants, the recommended time frame is at least 4 to a maximum of 8 hours. For preparing a flight level intro workshop, we have good experience with the following building blocks. Start with the current situation. For instance, with providing retro-like questions such as what works well, what doesn't, would you like to improve the most? If we deal with a large group number of people, we split them up in small groups and ask them to discuss and visualize the top 3 answers. Since encouraging an open exchange is one of our goals, we built these groups according to the principle of maximizing for strangers. That is, preparing for a cross-functional and hierarchy-bridging mix that guarantees different perspectives. After having clarified where we start from, we always provide some input about the flight levels model, featuring core activities and practical examples. Asking for comments and questions on this input, we mix people up again and let new groups resonate with what they've heard and seen. Having them define group speakers to present their outcome and doing a bit of Q&A are also classic elements of Flight Level's intro workshop. Since improvement is not just a matter of intellectual understanding, we always include a practical experiment of producing something together. Whether it is the paper boat or a similar exercise, experiencing the laws of flow together always pays off. By engaging hands and hearts as well, it connects people in a different way and helps to generate counterintuitive insights about push and pull, stable systems, or focus. Experiential learning also makes it easier to connect new insights with old routines. This is exactly what we want people to do at the end of the Flight Level intro workshop. We send them back to their initial groups and ask them to connect flight levels to the most important challenges they came up with at the very beginning. Which of the core activities addresses these challenges? What elements can they use for improving their situation? How do patterns of creating focus resonate with the daily business? By mapping flight levels, current situation, they may discover that a lack of transparency can be easily addressed by visualizing work and activities. Dependencies can be addressed with professional flow management, or that a clever set of metrics helps to inform about real progress. Whereas both the improvement flow workshop and the flight level introduction are used rather early in an improvement initiative, the third format is used when a certain system or architecture has already been designed. The so-called sounding board aims to involve a broad variety of stakeholders. Its main purpose, though, is not about introduction, but about a joint review and a clear decision whether or not the draft design or architecture is good enough to take off. Similar to a product review, the sounding board is about getting to know what has been done by the system designers and providing feedback. Clearly, that also means taking questions and concerns seriously and using them as an opportunity to share knowledge. With the sounding board, we want to foster mutual understanding and achieve consent whether the current system is ready for operation. As to supportive boundaries for sounding boards, it again depends on the number of flight level stakeholders you want to involve. If it is a rather small group, say up to 15 people, 19 minutes and one facilitator might suit the purpose. If it is a large group event with 20, 30 or more participants, you need more time and at least some assistance. A simple rule of thumb is the more people you want to engage, the more you have to scale space-wise as well as time-wise, including at least one break. For preparing and facilitating a flight level sounding board, I recommend, again, to use 4 building blocks. The first one is about a kind of demo, that is presenting the draft system or architecture as short as crispy as possible. Usually, we agree on a time box no longer than 10 minutes. The presentation, however, should be done by the designers themselves to emphasize ownership. Once the presentation is over, the participants are invited to review in small groups and also answer questions such as what resonates with them, what is too unclear, and what ideas for improvement do they have? After having given them a reasonable amount of time to discuss these questions and visualize the most important answers, I usually ask different groups to cluster them silently. Given a certain overview, we facilitate a Q&A session, for instance, by using a so-called fishbowl setup to foster intense communication, even if it is a larger group, an intense communication of an inner circle of delegates, while keeping everything transparent for the outer circle and even having an open chair to intervene. Finally, the group decide whether or not the system design is good enough for takeoff, agree on next steps, and that might also include ideas for further improvement. The last format I would like to present is the System Improvement Workshop. With this format, we want to gather information how the current system or architecture is working, in order to create options for further improvement. In order to do so, flight level professionals need to prepare for feedback and input that might be helpful for those who operate the system or architecture. That means appreciating what is going well, but also offering a critical perspective. Furthermore, it means to bring in fresh know-how and facilitate agile interactions to help operators to help themselves. Thus, the ultimate goal of a system improvement workshop is adapting or even remodeling the current design or architecture or even the flow of the initiative in order to achieve better results. You might ask yourself why you should do a system improvement workshop at all. Why not sticking to the proven format of an agile retrospective? The oldie but goldie model of the Johari window can help us to point out the difference system improvement workshops might make. The Johari helps us to distinguish 4 states of awareness between oneself and others. Transferring these states to the world of improvement initiatives, we can differentiate what flight level practitioners and flight level professionals do know and do not know, and how this affects how they interact with each other. What both practitioners and professionals know is what the current system looks like. Given that this system is up to date and shows all activities work in their respective state of completion, everything is visible for everybody. What flight level practitioners also know is how they improve continuously. This is not obvious for a flight level professional, especially if it is an external one. Besides the notorious unknown unknowns nobody is aware of, there is a quadrant that the Johari model calls blind spot. In flight levels land, this is the area of things practitioners do not know yet, neglect, or fail to do, whereas professionals can bring in fresh ideas. By comparing the different quadrants, we can point out the difference a system improvement workshop can make. Building on their know-how, practitioners can realize a lot of improvements by helping themselves. For instance, by using retrospectives, synchronization meetings, workshops, communities of practice, or peer approaches. Professionals might assist as facilitators. But basically, these improvements emerge from regular operations and are inspired by self-organization. In contrast to the improvements practitioners can achieve by helping themselves, they need professional help to discover their blind spots. Such a discovery might be very helpful for operating the system better, but are simply not known yet. Thus, professionals can create further options by providing expert feedback, building fresh know-how, and inspiring practical solutions for current problems. To set the right boundaries for such an endeavor, you need to first clarify who should participate in a system improvement workshop. It shouldn't come as a surprise that the answer is, it depends. Sometimes it is smarter to work just with a small group of delegates. Sometimes you better involve a larger group of stakeholders to share know-how on a broader level. It always pays off, however, to involve the sponsor who is hopefully still in charge of supporting the organization's journey to the North Star. Once again, the number of participants define how many facilitators and how much time you need. Whatever the boundaries look like, preparing for a system improvement workshop is based on, guess what? Right, 4 building blocks. Number 1, you have to gather data, for example, about the board, policies, interactions, or metrics. You have to understand what is going on in order to build hypotheses based on your professional experience. Whatever your feedback looks like, and whatever improvement options you can create, you have to share both feedback and options before the workshop starts. Hence, getting in touch with your sponsor and the core team is the second building block for a system improvement workshop. Once you have tested what you have in mind and received some kind of positive sounding, you can fine-tune your feedback and input. That is the building block number 3. The fourth building block is about helping to adapt the current flight level system or architecture by redesigning as practical as possible. Don't make the workshop a lecture about agile theory. Show and tell what improvement with flight levels can look like. This was everything I wanted to share upfront about the essentials of flight level workshops. I hope my presentation resonated with you, and I'm already looking forward to our next plenary session to discuss and share more feedback. See you there.